volatility and uncertainty. And it's my pleasure to introduce the panelists. Our moderator today is Nancy Ilo Naji, Anchor, AIT Television. And our panelists, Mrs. Oyeyimika Adeboye, CEO, Mendelez West Africa. Please, a round of applause for them as they come up. Mr. Courage Obodagboyin, CFO, APM Terminals, Africa Cluster. Ms. Nkechi Obi, General Group Managing Director and CEO, Techno Oil Limited. And Mr. Modupe Quadri, CFO, MTN, Nigeria.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's so nice being here. Our panel, as mentioned earlier, is an interesting one, titled Navigating Business Growth in an Era of Volatility and Uncertainty. Of course, we know that a lot has happened in the last few months or even a few years, let me say that, in an era of inflation, cost of living crisis, a shrinking consumer spending power, low purchasing power, a hit to global supply chains. So today, our panel will be discussing that, looking at the challenges that are being faced by different sectors. And I'm really honored to have diverse panelists from different sectors of the economy. And let me just quickly do another introduction so that we understand our panelists today. To my immediate right is Mr. Courage Obadagboyin. He is the Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director at APM Terminals. He's dealing with keeping global supply chains running smoothly in an ever-complex logistics world. So no pressure there, you know. All right, close to him is Mrs. Oyeyimika Adeboye. She is the Managing Director of Cadbury West Africa. She's at the helm of a leading consumer goods company, keeping us stocked with snacks and food, you know, even when supply chains has other plans. So you're welcome, ma'am. Navigating everything from volatile cocoa prices and what have you, and to the joys of inflation, so you're welcome. Close to her is Mrs. Nkechi Obi, who is the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Techno Oil Limited. She's a powerhouse in the energy sector. Well done for powering our businesses and balancing local production with local volatility. Ms. Nkechi Obi, OON. And last but not the least is Mr. Modupe Quadri. He's the CFO of MTN Nigeria, steering one of the leading telecoms companies through the roller coaster of the Nigerian economy. So what you're trying to do is ensuring that we stay connected in a very disconnected world right now. So let's see how that goes. So different sectors. But I think I will start with all of you, and the question will be around, how easy or difficult is it to do business in Nigeria now, when we have uncertainty, when we have volatility? I've just come out from the fiscal reform session where I heard the Minister of Finance and the Coordinator of the Economy try to assure us that all will be well, that they're doing a lot of things physically to make businesses as yours be comfortable. So I think ladies first, if you don't mind. So let me start with the MD of Cadbury West Africa, Ms. Adeboye, over to you. In just 2 minutes. I'll go around 2 minutes, yeah.
For someone who doesn't go on roller coasters, it feels like a roller coaster, but I think, you know, if you've been in Nigeria long enough, this is our fourth wave of roller coasters. So I think what you really have to do is brace up. That's what we've said to ourselves, that Nigeria always comes out of it, you know, and I guess that's a positive spin to it, because in an environment like this, if you're very negative, you're not going to survive. So the way we look at it is, the spin is that, you know, here we go again. How bad or how painful or how energetic is this roller coaster going to be, and what are the things that we're going to do to make sure we survive the ride. That's how we phrase it.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. In the midst of the challenges, you're being optimistic.
Absolutely.
All right. Ms. Nkechi, I'll be over to you.
Okay. Basically, we have always been in the industry where volatility has been. You recall that, I think, years back. What I'm trying to say here now is that Techno Oil has always been, our model has always been in the, we have always operated in an industry that is actually, has its obstacles and every other thing. And these are basically how we came into the industry. Years back, when the IOCs were basically the one controlling the oil industry. And there were the indigenous companies who were quite very few. You didn't have, you only will hear companies like Total, Shell, and whatever. But then, with the digitization decree, and I think during the Obasanjo regime, he was able to make things a bit for indigenous companies to come in and compete. And at the end of the day, yes, those issues are still there, but we're able to overcome, and we've been able to play a leading role in indigenous companies, and especially the downstream sector. The indigenous companies have basically controlled it with all the volatility that is ongoing today. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kadri, it's just going to be a bit different because I wonder what it could be for you in your space. What doing business is?
Okay, so if we put it in context, the economic conditions we're talking about, so we're talking about rising inflation, 34, moderating to 32%. We're talking about Forex, from the levels of 460 to 1600. You're talking about borrowing rates hitting the MPR being jacked up to 28, so your effective borrowing rate could be as high as 35%. So back to your specific question, what do we see? Well, in this quantum, I don't think we've seen this level of devaluation in the economy, but over the period, you've been having devaluations, and I think just like Emeka said, you have to take a long-term view of the economy. You can't take a short-term view. So MTN, for instance, is in Nigeria for the long haul. We take this as a blip in the course, because if you don't make those investments or you don't believe in the economy, then you have no business being here. So you probably have to have a tough mind to navigate these headwinds. Yes, they're strong. Like Cadbury, we all suffer the same fate with wiping out of our shareholders' funds. But the fundamentals of the respective businesses are still there, which tells us that there is some room for progress as long as those managing the economy are able to fix the basics. And just like the World Bank economist said yesterday, we made mistakes in the past. If these are measures designed to correct those mistakes, then we all have to rally around and weather the storm, because we know that it's going to be brighter at the other side.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kadri. Please, I would implore us to put on our mics. I don't know if I'm just the only one. Yeah, to put it on. Yeah. Okay, so, Mr. Obara, when you're next.
Thank you. For us, as a logistics provider, terminal operator, I would say we have come to a realization that volatility is the new normal. And you could slice and dice this several ways, but I would say there are components that are uniquely Nigerian, some of which Modupe has mentioned, FX rates and so forth. But even on the global stage, there is a lot more volatility. Sitting here 13 months ago, no one anticipated what's happening in the Middle East today. And all these things have a bearing on, globally, including Nigeria. The war in Ukraine, I'm sure when it started, people obviously thought it would be a 2-3 week military incursion. Here we are today. And no one anticipated the impact of those two countries on global food prices. So it's a lot more levers. The world is a lot more interconnected. And unfortunately, the global players are a lot more, shall I say, erratic. I was reading an article attributed to Rana Forura, who is an economist with the Financial Times. And she said that over the past few years, even America is now behaving like a developing country. Lots of promise, lots of peril, but with lots of unpredictability. And all of that have a knock-on effect on economies like Nigeria, right? There is no middle ground, for instance, in American politics anymore. You are either fully left or fully right. And these have significant ramifications, like on their immigration policy, their trade policies, all of which affect all of us. So for us, like I said at the onset, volatility is the new normal. You need to, as companies, build resilience, take your risk management protocols very seriously in order to wade the storms. Both those that are uniquely Nigerian, like I said, or the global shocks that we are facing day in, day out.
What I'm also hearing from you is there's a component of political risk there.
Oh, yeah.
Which, yes, I don't know if businesses also, if you put that into context. But let me also stick with you and do a follow-up on that. Of course, we've seen, even from the COVID time, that logistics has been hit hard owing to global disruptions impact. In what ways has your company, that's APM Terminals, perhaps leveraged technology? Because at the beginning of today, we had even a session on innovations and how technology can help unlock some opportunities in different sectors. So how perhaps are you leveraging on technology to address some of those challenges that you've talked about, especially, and maintain operational efficiency in Nigeria despite the challenges? Also putting in context Africa intra-regional trade, because you're doing the logistics business. Yeah.
Okay. So 2 or 3 part question. Let me begin with the last one, the after arrangement, if I may put it that way. That ship, shall I say, physically and philosophically has sailed, because the first vessel, the first export vessel under the ACFA agreement actually shipped from our terminal 2-3 months ago in July, actually. And it touched various countries, Algeria, Uganda, Kenya, and so forth. And we are talking about tangible exports from Nigeria, agri-products, and so forth. So it is a welcome development, because it should, we are actually playing on the fringes in terms of marine investments and in the region and globally. We don't have a fully flagged national liner that bears a Nigerian name. We don't today. So if AFTA goes to plan, then that's an investment opportunity for Nigerians to claim a stake in the regional vessel network. So it's a positive thing. There are lots of things to be smoothed out, very complex. We are talking about 52 different countries with almost 45 different currencies, different tariff regimes. All these things have to be harmonized somehow, because we are at an disadvantage versus other economic blocks. Like the Eurozone, they have one currency, so it's easier to trade. But it's a good first step, and we can build on that in due course. You also asked about how we are deploying technology and so forth. It's a no-brainer. It helps us enhance, operational efficiency, like you said, helps us save costs. By virtue of because APM terminals, we operate over 70 terminals in 40 different countries. And we have that network across the terminals. We are able to provide predictive information to our customers, our consignees, about the progress of their vessels real time on the high sea and as they move from port to port. That is a very important value add to our customers. We have these liner dashboards where they can also track the progress of their vessels as well. Within the terminal, there is a full suite of technological enhancements we have done. Our terminal operating system is able to help us manage the yard space efficiently, right? So we are talking about 55 acres of land. At any given time, you could have about 18,000 to 20,000 different containers belonging to different customers. How do you effectively bring that out to our end users while minimizing your handling costs? Because the containers are stacked upon each other, one upon up to 5, 6 rows at any given time. So you need to deploy technology to make sure that that service is efficient, to make sure that there is reduced incidence of containers getting missing or pilfered or damaged and so on and so forth. So all of that is the suite of technological investments that we have done at the terminal and continue to do.
That's a whole lot, actually. So let me move over to you, Ms. Adeboye, and my question will really be around, with the current Forex volatility and perhaps even unavailability of Forex sometimes to do your business and Naira depreciation, how are you able to navigate perhaps sourcing raw materials, because you're in the fast-moving consumer goods industry? How are you able to do that locally versus importing? And what role do you see for local production to secure supply chain disruptions?
I think, first of all, in our industry, one of the biggest challenges we face is we're heavily dependent on imports. If I look at my peers and the conversations we talk about, it's bringing in ingredients, at least in the food sector, in the food and beverage sector, it's bringing in ingredients for our products, it's bringing in packaging materials, it's bringing in, even the logistics of a lot of what we're doing, is dollar denominated. What somebody was saying to me, oh, but you have sugar in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And I said, no, it's dollar denominated. I mean, the sugar suppliers are here. It's a global commodity. Cocoa is grown in Nigeria. It's a global commodity. It's priced, you pay in Naira, but it's benchmarked to the dollar. So, even where you have things that are technically local, they are not local in the sense of the cost of it. Your exchange rate would determine things. We had this conversation a while ago around the leveling of the currencies, and we said the good news is that at least you don't have a situation, for example, where your cocoa farmer is selling you cocoa where the official rate is 400 naira, but the parallel rate is, let's say, 700, 800 naira. He's selling you cocoa benched at 700, 800 naira. Now he has to sell you at 1,600 naira. But it's still bad news in the terms of the cost of it. I think a lot of things need to happen. But I think, first of all, the one fact is that we're heavily dependent on imports. And even where you don't have imported goods that come through the ports, you have local things that are priced in Naira imported. I think first of all, during the FX scarcity, first thing we did was to find suppliers locally that would bring it in so that I don't have to go and look for the FX, But I knew, of course, that my cost of doing business had now quadrupled. And therefore, the cost of my products technically has quadrupled. And that's a reality that we had to face in terms of pricing. We haven't priced so much. In my almost 15, 16 years at Cadbury Mondelez, in the last 2 years, we've priced more than we've priced in the last 10, 15 years, because it's all dependent on FX. Your suppliers are charging you based on the currency. And if your currency is moving from 800 to 900, 900, 1,001, your purchase order gets changed. Your supplier just returns it to you and says, sorry, yes, I took this purchase order from you to supply you about 3 months. But when I took it from you, FX was 1,000. Now it's 1,006 or whatever it is. So, we labeled it localization. But for me, the ideal localization and what we are working on is to finding people who would manufacture in Nigeria the same ingredients with local products. It's very tough to find. And I think, the reality is that there are two or three barriers. The first barrier is, access to funding for people who even want to do it. We had one or two suppliers who want to make for us glucose. We import glucose. You can make glucose from ingredients in Nigeria, but they can't get financing because, they are labeled as too small to have collateral to get banking facility. So, there's that challenge there. The second challenge is also that even those suppliers need to understand that you are supplying to global producers. So, if I'm getting something from Germany or China or the US, and I want to make it in Nigeria, you still have to go through the same standards. my company is very particular about quality. And just from experience, two of the suppliers I was working with were willing to compromise in terms of quality. And that is a challenge, because if your quality isn't good enough, I wouldn't buy from you, because it's food. You don't want to poison your consumers. So you need the same quality that you get here that you get abroad. But I think more importantly, when you take out the issue of buying something in Nigeria that's dollar denominated, we really need to take seriously the need to localize a lot of our ingredients and components. Today, most of the global companies, 70–80% of our inputs, if you take labor out, is either imported or dollar denominated. We need to change that narrative. We need to make it probably 30–70 and have 30% imported. You can't be 100% self-dependency. I mean, that's the reality of life. But you need to change the narrative to have more of your ingredients sourced locally than the other way around. And I think if you're able to do that, that gives you, and that's what we are currently working on, because we can't, as a business and even as a country, we can't carry on like this. We can't carry on being dependent on almost everything coming from abroad. We don't have the FX to do so. And I think just the flip side also is where you encourage local manufacturers, either in terms of quality, but also in terms of policy, you would also be generating FX for yourself, because they also can export to those countries. What makes those countries better than us? Nothing. If they can do it, we should be able to do it as well. And I think that's what we need to start focusing on.
Very interesting perspective, and I'll come back to you in terms of how you are able to maintain even customer loyalty without sacrificing profitability, and also thinking about the volatile nature now that the consumer spending power is shrinking within how to get your goods. So just ruminate over that, and I'll come back to you in a bit. Ms. Nkechi, I'll be over to you, and tell me how you're able to navigate. We know the challenges in Nigeria, doing businesses and all of that. What the session is about is looking at navigating these challenges and perhaps expectations from policymakers and how to make a business right. So speak to me about your experiences around commodity prices and forex issues impact, because that has been a major. I see that as a denominator in almost what we are saying here, the impact, and what lessons perhaps other energy companies can actually also learn from what your company is doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Basically, businesses are supposed to strive in an environment with good policy. Incentives from government and enabling a good enabling environment. But when you look at what is happening today in terms of forests and every other thing, Techno Oil is basically in two segments of the business, and that is being a manufacturer into production, and at the same time trading in petroleum products. Of course, in terms of the petroleum products, government is basically the sole importer in that. So at the end of the day, they basically has taken our role, because definitely it can't work. They've basically taken out that role, and they are the one doing it. At least everybody knows today what is happening, and these are basically the price of fuel today because of the harmonization in the exchange rate. And so they are dealing with that, and we hope that with the upcoming Dangote refinery, we'll be able to be a bit stable in the prices of petroleum products, prices of PMS. Some other products that we have, they manufacture, that's where, yes, a lot of what we have, we produce cylinders. We produce cylinders in the country in a way for Techno Oil to come in and support the government and the Nigerians in terms of increasing the adoption of LPG within the country, because our level was so low. And that's our entry coming in. And yes, we definitely have so much in terms of trying to, the difficulties trying to access forex and every other thing, because our component, 99% of our components are dollar denominated. But for us, what we did last year was trying to do quite a lot of forwards. We did quite a lot of forwards that enabled us to come up with meeting our raw materials. And I think up to today, we are still able to, some of those forwards are still there. And so these are things that we did to be able to navigate that. And because the forest market too, sometimes there are traders that are very much, what will I say, that's their forte. So sometimes we try to use them internationally to deal with our forest issues. So these are things that has come up, and for this year, of course, it's not been easy. And so we try to diversify. There are other organs of products that we try to see in terms of trying to source locally some of our raw materials to build up people in terms of, there are a lot we were importing before. Some of the components we were importing before, but today we've been able to get like local suppliers trying to kind of fabricate such raw materials so that it's not everything that we are important at the time, so more like backward integration. So these are some of the things we have done and will continue to do to be able to navigate. Thank you.
Okay. CFO, you have a very interesting role, and the question would be around, of course, this volatility we're seeing. What measures have you implemented to diversify revenue streams? You just heard Madam Obi talk about that they needed to do backward integration. They needed to diversify there. So I would like to know how you've been able to diversify your revenue streams beyond the traditional telecom services to ensure continued growth for you, and your role of balance, dealing with short-term pressures as well as planning for long-term growth for your company.
Okay, I think the starting point is to understand the nature of the problem. So, dovetailing from where they took off, our business is mainly dependent on Forex. So, and to understand the problem, the Forex problem arose as a result of a change in policy to devalue or to let Naira find its true level, basically, and the same thing also happened in the petroleum industry, which is to get appropriate pricing for petroleum products, basically removing any subsidies. So, which meant that the government was feeling some pressures arising from this burden it was carrying, and has now decided to remove those things. Now, when you roll that problem into the telecoms industry, problem still remains Forex. We've suffered devaluation from Forex, the movement of the rate from 400 to 1600. We've established letters of credit to import equipment because most of this equipment that you use for the industry are imported. Right, and then you had commitments at contractual levels which the CBN had not fulfilled. So you had realized Forex losses because you had to look for alternative sources to do those things. That's one side of the equation, but we're into business, and the business is into the business to survive. Now, where the policy is not working in our favor in terms of your question, one is the fact that you live in a regulated industry where you're not allowed to adjust your prices. You heard Yimika say how they've moved prices in the last year over, that in the past 15 years they hadn't done that. Telecoms prices have not increased for the past 10 years. And yet, we are supposed to come up with providing these nice services that you all want. So my point is that how do we survive is the fact that if we do not fix that problem, if we say there's full deregulation in the economy, then let things find their natural levels because there will be no investments to support that. So you are busy talking about diversifying revenue streams. I'm talking of survivor. What is the business case for me to invest when I'm bleeding almost to death? So the point is that you can't talk about diversification of further investments. And so it was all nice hearing what the VP, His Excellency, said yesterday about Nigeria not being left behind in the fourth industrial revolution. But then he needed to have listened to the World Bank economists when he said, don't make the mistakes of the past. So the mistake that is being made is when you are stifling the growth of the telecoms industry, that is the backbone for all these things. All this technology Corey talked about, or everything the financial services runs about, telecoms is about 16% of the GDP. And if that industry dies or does not thrive, the whole economy comes down. So talk about diversification. There are other opportunities that are out there. You talk about mobile financial services. You talked about, there was a panel session earlier that talked about innovation, fintech, and all that. So yes, there's a need to put inclusion, financial inclusion, and that we're doing through the mobile money services. So that's one way of diversifying the streams. Digital service revenues. Digital is huge. You see, Nigeria is huge on content. Again, everybody, you are in the industry, so you know about content creation. But that content creation actually is on the backbone of digital services. So if you don't have the underlying network, the infrastructure, which needs investments, so we're going to lose out on all those opportunities. So in a nutshell, back to where I started, is that the government needs to be mindful that if you do not create an environment where industry will thrive, it's going to have a knock-on effect on other things. So we have no problem with the headwinds. We're just still saying that just like Yimika is able to have appropriate pricing in our own industry, you need the same in the telecoms industry. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing basically is that you're canvassing for appropriate pricing, and I guess what our audience should take away, or what they are thinking, is that, well, I'm going to be paying more for calls and data to reflect, of course, what you expect, because that's what it is actually. That if you're saying there's deregulation, total deregulation on the market, that means my prices should be able to reflect that and not inhibiting us as a company. That's what I hear.
Yeah, but respectfully,
Yeah.
that's what is happening already. So with the government-based services like electricity, you did that anyway, and heaven did not fall. The only problem was because the government was responsible for that. It was easy for them to pass on the buck. We are still saying that that's not right in our own industry. That's what we're saying. Petroleum products is the same thing. You know, gases, prices went up 200 naira. Nothing has happened. So customers need to realize that if you want the quality of service that you all desire,
You must
it
pay
costs,
for it.
apart from you have to pay for it, it costs money.
costs
Unfortunately,
money.
this money or these products or inputs are foreign, are imported things. And to the extent that the naira is at 1,600, there's no way I would invest in such an industry.
This is getting interesting, yes.
If I may just
Yeah.
build on that. And it's the same thing. In our port community, in our port logistics sector, the pricing is also regulated. So for 12 years prior to last year, we had not been allowed to increase tariffs, not even once. But everything around us was increasing astronomically. And if you look at the handling costs of cargo, which we provide, is just a minor fraction in the quantum of total cost of goods imported. But if you over-regulate an entity and they can't reinvest, we go back to the dark ages of where you had port rats, where you had the ports very dysfunctional, and you had issues of queues at the ports and so on and so forth, because you need to reinvest. And there is a finite supply of investment capital. If you work for multinationals like us, at their investment committee levels, they are taking objective decisions about how to deploy capital. It's not personal. And so when they have these discussions, they look at, they price all this volatility, this unpredictability, this lack of ability to adjust your prices into the cost of capital for the projects. And you are already at a disadvantage from the start if you come with a Nigerian product, because they probably allocate to you a working, cost of capital of 20-something%. But a similar project elsewhere in the world, Europe or wherever, is probably single digit. So from the get-go, you are already at a disadvantage unless capital gets deployed into Nigeria. So it's a vicious circle that doesn't serve anyone, really.
Okay, you know what we're going to do? Because one thing is common now, which is about policymakers. What I'm hearing now is regulation. So let's try as much as possible to tackle that. Let me still stick with you, but just for about 45 seconds. What kind of collaborations? Because collaboration is key, really, in a volatile environment with regulators, so that both can actually survive. So what kind of collaborations do you think that should be done now in this uncertain period in your industry with policymakers, with regulators? What kind of things are you expecting from them? so that you can not just survive, because Modupe actually said it, we're talking of survival. We are not even talking of profit yet.
Yeah. I think there's room for a lot more coordination across ministries and agencies of government. In our port community, there are multiple regulators, Shippers Council, Ports Authority, NIMASA, and so forth, on the regulatory side. Then for every article that comes into the country, there are like 10 to 12 agencies that have to go through its Standards Organization of Nigeria, NAFDAC, NDLEA, DSS, Port Police, Normal Police, Customs, the list goes on and on. That doesn't help the industry. So there needs to be, we've been singing the chorus about single window. We were discussing with Yimika, and she shared her experience about shipping goods from neighboring countries, and I even gave up. I thought I had it worse until she shared her experience. Maybe she will share it again, about the just lack of coordination on simple things that should be straightforward. We need that a lot because it causes confusion, and investment does not thrive in a vacuum where there's confusion. So a bit more of that would be very, very helpful.
Ms. Adeboye, over to you. How do we contain the confusion and the chaos, as it were? Also answer what I asked earlier, the question I asked you to ruminate over, how do you maintain balance between sacrificing growth and making sure that your customers also take in quality? With the regulatory standpoint, so that we ended it at.
Yeah, let me first of all start by saying, when I talk about pricing, there's a cost to pricing, unfortunately. So you price to protect your margins, and you're a finance person. You price to protect your margins, but in the process of pricing to protect your margins, you lose volume. Mm-hmm. Why are companies leaving Nigeria? It's not because they don't want to carry on, but because they've lost volume to the stage where they cannot cope anymore. And I'll give you a little story. Back in December 2022, we had one of our products, the demand was so good that we were actually investing in equipment to come to Nigeria. And then with the pricing and with the devaluation and all sorts of things, we had to stop that. Because guess what? That same product that was literally taking capacity, we're now selling a third of the volume. What does that do for a business? Talk about investment. And what does it do to investors who want to come to Nigeria? They're looking at Nigeria. The phrase is Nigeria as a whole. That is not, you just don't know. You're spending money, and each time you feel like you're on a treadmill, that's not going anywhere because your money sweats. But then by the time you think, okay, I can start reaping the dividends of my investment, something happens and it goes down the drain again. So, pricing is really for survival. And some of the products that you price, once you price, because, what we sell, let me speak for my business, it's not an essential. It's not rice. It's not bread. It's a luxury. We're in the snacking business. People who snack are people who have had 2 or 3 meals a day. Yeah. The person that hasn't had 2 meals a day is not going to snack. Yeah. So, it's real survival, to your point. How do I make sure that my business is still relevant, even in this economy? To have regulators, and I don't want to share too many stories because, some of those regulators might think it's been attacking, but it's not. It's just stating the facts. To have a process where you're talking about ease of doing business, it's a good talk, but we need to walk the talk. And I give a classic example of importing we ship to Ghana, and we bring from Ghana. We have factories in Nigeria, we have factories in Ghana. Both factories are producing different things, so we're shipping things. What you produce in Ghana to bring to Nigeria, the complication of bringing to Nigeria is worse than what you produce in Nigeria to take to Ghana, because the complication in Nigeria is once you leave the border. Before, in Nigeria itself, I'll give you a classic example. There are documents that need to be signed wet. And when you go to Tema, they're willing to take a scanned copy of it. But in Nigeria, the truck arrives, and somebody has to go to the bank, physically go to the bank and get a stamp, yes, before the truck is inspected. Now, you know what that does to your business? It's just little things that they're so simple to fix, but yet so complicated in our lives. Industry support, NECA, Manufacturers Association, EFBT, there are a lot of bodies out there that are really supporting us and helping us to carry on business. But the reality is that if I look at my business in Ghana, I'm not even a member of any of those associations because I don't need them. These things happen because there's a process and people allow the process to happen. But here, it's the other way around. And those are the things we need to really look at and fix because, like Modupe has said, a business like theirs is an engine to this economy. Ours is an engine to the economy. Manufacturing, telecoms, all these things matter. Oil, I'm sorry, it's becoming a little bit irrelevant everywhere else. It's only in Nigeria that we're yelling oil. If you look in Europe and developed countries, there's less focus on oil. Oil energy is losing its pace. And we are still in the, let me not say dark ages, but we're still struggling to fix the present. We need to start looking to the future. And that's probably one of the key things that, you said to me, how do you keep your consumers? You keep your consumers by making sure that if they're buying a product here, a Cadbury product here in Nigeria, it's the same quality that they will buy if they were anywhere in the world. It means that when you put something on the shelf here, you are comfortable that you can export it somewhere else. And our mantra is to say to ourselves, whatever we produce in Nigeria, the same way as we see on the shelves here, Oreos and Cadbury's and Milka and all those snacks, we want to be able to put our products on the shelves as well. But there's a cost to doing that, and Nigeria has to be ready to make the business easy to be in that space where we can export. Because what are we looking for? We're all talking about FX today. And where is that FX going to come from? It's going to come from our ability to play in the global market. But we're not playing in the global market. We're consumers of the global market. We're not, investors in the global market. And that's where the narrative needs to change for us.
Quite interesting dimension. And, especially for the consumer goods space which you operate, we've seen a gradual, I call it sachetization of the Nigerian economy in the last few years. You see, don't be surprised you see water in a sachet. Okay, we already have the pure water already. We have it, and it's even expensive now. And we even have the other one in Lagos. Those days, I don't know if they still do it. Women will put it in their own leather bags and be selling it 1 naira. I don't know if it's still on now. But where I'm driving to is the challenges of the industry and how policymakers can come in. So, Madam Obi, Mr. Adeboye just gave you a punch there somehow. I don't know if you would like to respond to that, given also the dependency of the Nigerian economy on oil and perhaps what has been happening in the past few months around your space, the downstream sector. How should we now even ensure energy security? And reducing volatility, reducing vulnerability to global shocks. Anything that happens to oil, we cough, we sneeze in Nigeria, and perhaps you also respond to her in terms of, are there other things like innovations that you're also coming up with? Because oil is gradually losing its mojo.
Well, let me...
But some people may also disagree, though. So.
Yes, you talked about the energy security and then the oil losing its focus. Well, and oil might be losing its focus, but gas is not losing its focus. So that's a different issue because there's so much we can do with gas in the country here. So that's just it. But when it comes to the energy security, yes, for me, energy security is all about, it's part and parcel of providing infrastructure to deal with that. And trying to, energy security, trying to provide the necessary infrastructure that will be able to hold your stock in terms of whatever happens so that you are not vulnerable. And how are we able to do that? Yes, in Nigeria here, yes, NMPC, of course, started by being the sole everything in the oil distribution. Like I have mentioned before, we started with just working with the IOCs until a point came in and said, oh, it looks like, because at the point we had pipeline vandalization and everywhere there was so much chaos in terms of queues and every other thing. And what was actually the problem? I can tell you that a significant part of it is energy security because there were no adequate infrastructure to hold those stocks and there were no adequate infrastructure to distribute petroleum products across the country because the pipeline that was already done at that point were all vandalized. So you needed, and somehow, yes, a thought came in within the government that, look, there has to be depots around the country to be able to keep, instead of the stock we are having in Lagos is being piped almost from Port Harcourt. And you know they were vandalizing that at that point. So this has, the government in terms of policy at that point did well, just like I mentioned, that's how we, indigenous, whatever, I was in ExxonMobil then, or Mobil it was called, and that was the gap I saw, and I felt that, look, I needed to come and play in that, to look at there was the gap, and in terms of providing petroleum products and whatever, within the whatever. So that was how I left and had my own company, Techno Oil. And today, we have played very well in terms of that. And government, in the actual part, has been able to deal with that. That's how you have, like government has an Atlas Curve. That's their own security, energy security they have put in place in terms of any shock. But for now, with this petroleum, with this forest situation and whatever, I can't say what is happening in that. You understand? But I'm happy that with the coming on board, I say it, of Dangote, Bua, there is a whole lot of modular refineries all over the place coming up, and we, our own too, we're already working on one too. So I believe that with that, we'll be able to, we're in a better position to shore up or try to avoid any shock that will come into Nigeria.
Okay, just before you go, because I know that everyone in the room would like to know if there will be availability, since you play in that space. We are talking about petrol supply. If there will be ability, what's your outlook for it? If there will be availability, if it could be affordable, because Nigeria's highest currency now can't buy a liter of petrol. So what's your outlook for the space in just a few seconds?
Well, I can tell you that the outlook, the petrol we have today is dollar denominated, because I don't want to say so much, because crude oil has to play a very significant role in terms of how much would petrol would come out of. Government, are they ready to sell, to give Dangote petrol at zero naira? If he's paying in naira, but I believe that it has to do with the exchange rates too. You understand? So I don't see, because at the moment now, petrol has increased. The price of petrol has increased, and somehow, and there is a reason for that. And that is so that because there has been able to be a big gap whereby there is not enough supply. So that shock is there. So I believe that government is able, they are trying to open up the market again, so that anybody can, those in the industry can go in and import. That's what I think that is happening. And with that, so I'm not able to see where the pricing will come, because it's still dollar denominated.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. This next round will just be 45 seconds each, because I would like us to go to the audience to take their questions, because we're gradually coasting to the end of this session. So this round will be about talent retention. Because talent too, I know as chief executives in your space, you're also navigating talent exit, the Japa syndrome that we're having. So, Modupe, I think I'll start with you. Your sector is also one sector that is suffering that with the banking space and all of that. For me, as an example, I have accounts with 3 banks. My account officers in those 3 banks, twice have gone. They've all left Nigeria. So I'm wondering what could be happening in your space. Yeah.
Well, I think for us, anyway, we have a talent retention policy. So the whole idea is to encourage. Bear in mind that you have generations in the company. So when you look at the Gen Zs, the millennials, and the baby boomers, they all have different dynamics. So in our own place, we try to have flexible working hours. People can work from home. People are encouraged to, pick additional studies paid for by the company, leave of absence and all that. And the whole idea is just to make it as much as flexible as possible to retain. Now, to be clear, you can only do as much, but at least you have to do what is within your space. So at least those who are following the news, you'll find out that MTN was ranked recently as one of the top 100 places or 120 in the ranking globally, and that's because of the policies that have been put in place. So we try to do these things to also put different schemes where people will be able to work Collaborate has been a word that's been used, working in cross-functional teams. And because the skill sets required today, it's not that you're going to have just one skill set, you have to have a combination of skill sets and make the workplace enjoyable to work. So flexi working hours, working from home, are some of the vibes that most people can relate to, and that's one of the ways we keep retaining our staff.
Okay, Courage, very quickly, yours too.
No, I think for us, what we've done is give our teams things to aspire to, right? From the tone at the top, the leadership at the top. I'm proud to say the leadership team, unprecedented, is made up 60% of Nigerians, and the entire workforce is probably 95% Nigerians. So when the teams see line of sight in their careers that they can aspire to be this leader, that person who is Nigerian, and there are no roles that are where there are unspoken roles that must not be occupied by Nigerians, like my role historically. It motivates people to aspire. Then the usual things around training, developing people, very strong exchange programs. People go and see best practice outside the country, come back. It keeps them motivated, and vice versa. People also come. We have a world-class training center in our terminal in Apapa, and we welcome stakeholders, other terminal operators to come in and learn and get certified from work that they've done or training they've received in our local terminal. Those involved in that program are really motivated to remain in the organization. But you can't force talent, really, but you can only do the best you can.
Ms. Adeboye?
I think, first of all, whatever policy you have, what you have to remember is that people are also looking, a lot of employees are looking at what is going on here in Nigeria and what is going on out there. As a global entity, we have numerous fantastic tools that we adopt to retain. But if I talking to my HR team last month, we do a review of retention, and we looked at the last 18 months, and almost 80% of employees that have left us, 80% have left us not for another company in Nigeria, but out of the country. That's a huge message. And with that in mind, one of the things we do engagement surveys twice a year, where we ask our employees to tell us. And it's a global process that we go through. It's very anonymous. We encourage people to put comments. It ranges from totally disagree and totally unhappy to I love it here. And we take that every time. We dissect it with consultants, go to teams and make sure that each team is assessing what is the story, why are people saying what they're saying, what do we need to fix it. It's very directional because the idea is not to hear what people are saying, but also to fix what they're saying. We also have what we call a talent retention. It's like strategic. It's called a strategic talent review process, where employees and their managers talk about their development plan. And it's typically a 3-year. So, I.e. Mika Adeboye, what's going to happen to me in 3 years? What is my next step career-wise? So that people have visibility of where they're going to end up. Now, the one thing that we do with that process is that we're engaging beyond Nigeria. So my talent review is not a Nigeria talent review. It's a Sub-Saharan Africa talent review. So that talents that I have in Nigeria have an opportunity to be heard by other markets. Mm-hmm. And we've had situations in the last 10, 12 months, we've exported, I call it exported, 2 of our colleagues outside of Nigeria from that process, where people have said, this is a fantastic guy. I need this person to come and do this role in my country. So that also gives people the reality of, okay, I don't quite have to japa because the process can help me to japa if I really need to. But it's performance-based, and it's a conversation with your manager, and it's something that really works for us. So those are some of the things that we do.
Okay. All right. Alamobi, quickly. Talent retention in just a few seconds.
Yes, for us, yes. Training and development, but I must tell you, we take kindly to, we are very serious in our the trade, housing, transport, and health. We have very serious, very important schemes that try to kind of tie up the staff, so that retention will be very high.
Okay. All right. I think we'll take it now to the audience. Because of time, I'm looking at my time. I'll have about 9 minutes to get out of here. So I would just take 2 questions. So if you have a question, please, can you just raise your hand? I think I'll take from here. And I don't know if there's any on my back. Okay. So we'll do it this way. 1, 1. And please just go straight to the point. Ask your question, just go straight to the point so that we can end. Yes, please, sir, you can stand up and ask your question. Please, can you hand in this mic? Okay, there's one there. Thank you. Okay, you can have that. Please, in just about 30 seconds, your name and...
Yes, my name is Teso Boswa from Standard Chartered Bank. My question is to the gentleman from AP Mola. Looking at the shipping system within West Africa, you notice that shipping something from Nigeria to perhaps Ghana is almost a nightmare. There doesn't seem to be anything like that. And then if you hear what Yemika Adeboye was saying regarding the need for exports, we are a big country. We should be exporting or serving as a hub for the rest of West Africa. But how do you make that possible when you can't even ship to Togo, Ghana, or any of the countries within the cluster? How do we solve this problem and therefore catalyze the export potential that exists on shore?
All right, thank you. The next question. So I hope we're taking it.
My name is Benjamin Aduli. I work with MICE. MICE is an acronym for Mechanized Agricultural Investments and Services Limited. My question is for the panel, is ease of doing business for small-scale businesses. In the nightmare you just described, how on earth can an SME exist in Nigeria? If multinationals like you are finding it difficult to swim in this sea or ocean, how on earth can SMEs who has very small fraction of the resources you have exist in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you. I've been signaled to that we still have a few more minutes, so the timing there is inaccurate, so we just have like 15 minutes more, so or 20 to get us. So I will take a few more questions. So let's take from the gentleman here, then we'll take from her. Sorry?
There's one behind you.
Oh, okay, yeah, so we'll take from him, take from her, then take from behind. So if I have time, I'll still come back to you. Yes. Please, very quickly, in like 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. My name is Rumel Gane. I'm the chairman of Ecosystem Africa. We have an ecosystem of 5,000 young people from different clusters. Now, this is my question. We're having this conversation on the challenges. I want to ask, is the team of the ease of doing business, are they here to listen to what we're saying? The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, are they here to listen to what we're saying? The management of NNPC, Ministry for Petroleum, are they here? Because if these critical agencies who play a very important role in helping to solve this, that's the chairman of the House Committee on Policy in Trade and Investment, are they here? If they are not here, or their teams are not here to be part, to listen to the critical issues, sorry, I don't know why we're here having this conversation.
Okay, absolutely. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll take her question so that we can all come back and address. Sorry? Okay.
All right. My name.
No, there's someone behind. It's her time. She would ask the question, then you.
Okay. Good afternoon. I just have 2 questions. Number 1 has to do with
Your name?
Maricel. What is the current plan based on the world situation in the Middle East and the new dynamics around the shipping routes? What is the plans or the perspective of Nigeria being a second stopover or a primary stopover for the new shipping lines? Then the second question goes open to the table, and is pretty much how do we see, or what is our vision for the impact of the eco currency that the ECOWAS is trying to implement? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Fabian Ajogu, and my question is in two parts. First, to the Techno Oil CEO. What makes a capitalist sell his cash cow? I'm talking about divestments in the oil and sector. And then what makes the local rush in to buy the cash cow? Maybe if I phrase it this way, particularly if the capitalist has not stopped liking cows and is buying new cows in Angola. So this, I'd just like to get your thoughts on it. Okay. My second part of it is to Mr. Kadiri, and I empathize with your challenges. Everything has gone up in Nigeria except rate per minute. How long do you think is sustainable in terms of months, years, to continue to have your costs in dollars and offer us this service in fixed naira? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll end it at that because we have to leave here at 2:30. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. We need to leave here at 2:30. No, I apologize. We need to leave here at 2:30. This place needs to be dressed. So I apologize so that our panelists can answer the question. We have to leave here like in less than 7 minutes. So I apologize. So over to you. Question on shipping, yes.
Yeah, I picked two questions that are relevant to my space. I think the question you asked, I forgot the name, was how Nigeria no longer becomes a feeder terminal. What we call in the industry feeder terminals are terminals that are fed from larger gateway terminals. And what the dynamic of that is that globally, liners are deploying bigger and bigger vessels to achieve economies of scale. What that means is that your infrastructure has to be able to serve those bigger vessels. And at the moment, there is a huge deficit in that, at least in the Lagos port environment. So to answer your question, we need to invest. And there is a proposal out there that our group has put forward and under consideration with the policymakers to deepen the draft, reinforce the infrastructure to allow us remain a gateway terminal rather than a feeder terminal that is fed from terminals like Tema or Ivory Coast, which is embarrassing for a market of our size. The other question was on export promotion from Teso at Standard Chartered. We are doing a lot with the railways to provide products to enhance export facilitation. The good news, if I may share, is that year over year, our export has grown 25% at Apapa, and at our other terminal in Onair, WACT, it has grown 33%. So some of the efforts, time will fail me to list them all out, but some of the efforts are yielding results really, and there is strong prospect for increased exports from the terminals.
Okay, let me take the comment from the SME frustration and the comment about having the right people here.
Yeah.
I actually connect the two because the reality is that a lot of the conversation we're having here, if we don't have the right people here that can take it on, particularly around regulatory and government bodies, then we're just honestly wasting our time. This year, we're in October, 10 months. In the last 4 or 5 months, I've attended 2 or 3 sessions, one from MAN. There was the American Business Council meeting with the Vice President, where we had the right stakeholders in the room, and a lot of commitments were made. But quite a number of us CEOs left that meeting feeling, we've spoken again. We've voiced ourselves, and we've talked about the things that need to be done. Is anything going to happen out of this? I know it's a bit too early, and these things take time, but I think it's so important to have those government bodies in these sessions, and it's also important to have a follow-up on what will happen subsequently. Now, to your comment around the frustration that you would have, I think, first of all, if I look at what we do, we partner with a lot of our suppliers. We work with them with the banks to get bank facilities. We work with them with regulators to get approvals for things, because it's in our interest that they succeed. And we do recognize that small enterprises are really the funnel, for growth in our economy. So we do a lot of things partnering with our, once we've identified partners, we do a lot to work with them around regulatory side. And I think I'll encourage other companies to do the same, particularly if you're a big organization like MTN, that's something that we should all do in our various sectors. But please, the organizers of NESG has been going on for 30 years now. I recall many years ago, in my days in Arthur Andersen, being part of what Dick Kramer started here. We need to make this relevant to make it practical. There's a lot of talking. Let's now start doing.
Do you want to answer the question around the eco-currency? Because you're the MD of Cadbury West Africa. You operate between Nigeria and Ghana.
I do. I think the reason I kept silent about that is I must confess that I'm not quite sure that it's going to take off. We do a lot of talking. After, we're still talking.
Yeah.
Nigeria is still talking. We operate in sub-Saharan Africa. I know what South Africa is doing. Even Ghana. Our business in Ghana has been given opportunities to sell to entities in East and South Africa because of AFTA. But Nigeria, we're talking. We're not doing. That's why I silenced on that. We can't even get ECOWAS. We've lost numbers. 4 countries have dropped out. So there's still a lot to do around even getting the economic agreement to work itself before we go into currency. I think personally, the currency conversation is not the top priority. I think the first priority is even to get cross-border transactions. Why would I want to buy something from Ghana and pay in dollars? Why would Ghana want to buy something from Nigeria and pay in dollars? That's a big question. The CBN started a process, I think it's called PAPS.
PAPS, yes.
It just hasn't taken off. So, why are we talking about eco-currency when we can't even fix what I call simple things like that? Eco-currency might be an enabler subsequently, but there are things we need to fix in terms of process.
Okay. Madam Obi, question on...
Yes. The question here, I think, why would a cash cow decide to sell off his a business? A capitalist. Why will a capitalist decide to sell off his cash cow?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can relate it to what is within the oil industry because right now we are in the business and yes, something like uncertainty can come into that. And right now, yes, we don't know. I can tell you that there is so much uncertainty in the downstream with the coming of Dangote. So it's a cash cow. I can decide to just jackpot, sell off, take my dollars and just whatever, because definitely with what government is, within what is happening within the government and the bigger masquerade that has come in, there is so much uncertainty. So if someone decides that, look, that uncertainty is what is the push. So that's just my take on that so much uncertainty can come in and then take it. Well, for a capitalist too, there might be some succession planning. That is, I know that you're an expert in succession planning, family, whatever. I've attended some of your whatever. So those coming after might decide that, look, I don't even want that headache and all whatever. I just want to sell off and go. So a lot is depending on how a capitalist can decide to just say, look, let me sell and go. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kadri?
I'll keep it brief to Mr. Ajogo's question. So simple analysis. Imagine you have a UPS. So you know you don't have power. So you know the UPS is going to go out. As the energy drains, it blips, boom, boom, boom. As to how long, we are the loudest decibel possible of that blip. And then you can figure out how long you have for the industry to come crashing down if something is not done urgently.
Okay. So as we close this, a lot to take out from this session. Of course, volatility is the new normal, so businesses must brace up for volatility. Businesses have boom and bust cycles. Businesses also need to build resilience. Regulators need to make business environment more friendly. A lot more action than talk, and stable policies, as it were, predictable policies from regulators to enable businesses to thrive. So I want to thank my fantastic panel for this. Please, a round of applause for them. Can we, please? Thank you very much. So we're really on time, 2:30, so we're out of it. Thank you. It's been so fantastic bringing you this panel. I am Nancy Nnaji. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our distinguished panel.
Okay.
We're going to take photographs now. I'd like to invite any member of the NESG board that's in the room to join our panelists for the photograph. Where is the phone?